Welcome to another Ask Me Anything. I'm parenting empowerment coach, Vanessa Callahan, and I have some really great questions lined up today based on some new members who have joined us. And let us know what's hardest right now in parenting. And I'm going to put the big list right on top here on Facebook and on Zoom, so you can just get a sense of what we're going to be covering today. Not sure if you'll see all of it on Zoom, but I'll put a big piece of it here. So I'm really excited to dive in because I know that there's a lot out there, folks, books and podcast episodes and all kinds of really great content. But what we're going to try and do something different today, and we've got Gregory here and Malavika, welcome, is give you some live feedback on any questions you might have around raising resilient kids, being a resilient parent, things like how to motivate your kids, how to tame triggers and tough emotions, how to get the daily routine running right, and navigating sibling conflicts, all kinds of challenges that are a part of raising children. And most of us don't have a lot of experience navigating these things, or if we do, maybe we're trying some things and they haven't been working. And so we seek solutions, and how good of you to do that for something so important. So really good to have you here. We're going to start with, let's start with Jen's question. So Jen is wondering, how do I gauge how much independence to give versus his skill level and willingness to help out? So Jen, I'm just going to check real quickly here how old your child is, your son, it sounds like. And yeah, let's jam on this. I think one of the most important things we can acknowledge is that this is tricky, right? Because we're always wanting to make sure that we're not sort of overshooting or undershooting what our kids are ready for. I've been there, trust me, I've definitely made my mistakes and asked and given a child a task that was a little bit above their level or very above their level. And then they're sort of like a fish out of water, struggling. And I've definitely given kids not enough. And then I start feeling frustrated that they're not helping out enough. So let's dive into this one. So one of the first things that you maybe already considered, but I really want you to try out and really give it a chance to work, is to do a lot of things alongside each other. And that way there's this invitation to sort of work side by side. And it's not just so he can get exposure to these tasks and everything. It's also so you can start to really consider it like an observation phase, where you can see oh, is he able to do things like, twist a lid off of a jar? And is he able to transfer something into a hot pot of water while it's simmering, boiling? Just these little pieces that kind of give you a sense of skill level. Because what we want to do is we want to get into something called the zone of proximal development. I'll say it again. It's the zone of proximal development. It's a term that we use in developmental psychology and developmental sciences when we're just thinking about how do we get into the zone of where there's current development, and let's say this is right here in the target, the everything that's right up against that zone is a zone of proximal development, versus out here where they're not quite ready to tackle it. So we're trying to figure out, where is this zone of proximal development? Where are they now, and what are they ready for next? And a lot of times what parents will do is they'll skip this step. I've done it. We've all done it. I've seen my clients do it. And oftentimes if you do it enough times, it starts to kind of wear things down with the kids, because you're missing the mark, so to speak, right? And so when you're wanting to get right there, you need to take some time to collect some information and sort of test it out where you're there, you're present, and you're paying attention. So think of it as how you don't want to give too much all at once when you're explaining something, and you can see your kids, their eyes kind of glaze over. Well, it's similar with tasks. You just give them a little bit and see how they can handle it. This is how it often goes. So this is what to avoid. You explain it once, you really show them, you teach them, and then the next time it's time to do that, you send them to go do it without you there. And that's what I call taking too much of a leap instead of scaffolding in that zone of proximal development. And so what you can start with is having him there, making sure that you're all you're observing, seeing what he's capable of doing. And then start with what you can see he really, really can handle, but still be in the room, still be right there, be ready to assist with things like making good decisions about where to put his attention or what to do next. That all really helps. The other thing is just like really playing an assistant role is kind of a fun way to think of it. So do daily life, do your chores, do things, and have him just help you with one thing here and there. Help with one thing, help with one thing, help with one thing. And when you do that, it gives them this sense of importance, of course, which is always key. But then you also want to make sure that he has a chance to, observe you and how you do it. Now, Jen, that was general advice. Now, Jen has a 15-year-old. So with a 15-year-old, you can guess that his zone of proximal development is it's pretty robust because there's been quite a few things he's had exposure to at this point in his life. But I'll tell you, I have a client who I work with and has a 28-year-old son, and she wasn't able to really get him involved with chores until recently, until our work together. And that's kind of a more like a longer example of time. But it just started with involve him, have him do one step, have him do one thing. Like, for example, she had him just chop some vegetables for dinner, and then it started getting him curious about cooking. Then they got some meal kits where you had to follow the recipe. And that was a nice thing for him. He liked that structure and that it wasn't coming from mom. Then they started doing grocery shopping. Then they went on a vacation, and a trip they've been planning for years. They finally went, and they got to try all kinds of food. And then they got excited about what other kind of cooking they could do at home. And the next thing you know, he's actually suggesting recipes, and they're having a chance to like really get his whole life skill set around cooking and helping out with food, up to speed. 15 can absolutely do that too. Now, in terms of independence with a teenager, you've got to really consider what level of accountability, responsibility has he demonstrated, and that's how much freedom and he can be afforded and given. Like, the privileges are earned through demonstration of trustworthiness, of honesty, of responsibility. I work with another client who has teenagers at home. She has a preteen, a teenager, and just brought her eldest to college. For his third year in school, he moved out to attend 4-year. And we've been talking a lot about this responsibility, independence piece. And one thing that she had to really get clear about, and Jen, this is something that might be, applicable to your situation, is what is a right and what is a privilege. And privileges are earned. They're like, you have to demonstrate that you're able to keep those. Teenagers are not good at making this distinction for themselves often. And so we have to sort of hardline at times and just be like, look, driving the family car on the weekends is a privilege. It's not a right. And having transportation is your right, but it can look like me giving you a ride. But you actually getting to have the car yourself and drive it around, where sight unseen, getting to do whatever you want in your car, pretty much. Until curfew, that's a privilege. And so you're going to need to do things like come home on time, fill up the gas tank like you said you would, help out around the house, clean up after yourself, is all a part of like showing us that you are at the level of responsibility to be able to then take the car out, into the world and have it independently. So tying some of these things together is really helpful. This works at all ages. Now, I have a quick question here from Gregory. What are some good ideas for keeping our mealtime agreements? With your 8 and 10-year-old. Oh, this is so good. Okay. First of all, 8 and 10 is a great sibling combo. It's pretty spicy and fun. They both want to assert their authority and have some more influence on how things are going. So one of the things I would do right away, if you want what kind of language allowed, staying seated, those kinds of things to go smoothly, is to really get into a rhythm of having regular family meetings, Gregory. Because when you're already in the dynamic, it's really tough. Because you're there and you're like, there's a lot, you're sort of I don't know, at least for myself, I get very attached to folks following through on agreements. And so what I would want you to do is set up a reflection process with your 8 and 10-year-old where you check in about once a week about how things are going, and meal times can be one of the topics that you check in about. And I have this whole process that you can go through with family meetings. It's really helpful to have sort of a set of regular questions. I call it the revisit reset, where you kind of revisit things and reset your agreements. Because oftentimes the reason why agreements fall apart is because the kids weren't enough of a part of making them, and or you don't have a way to address it when they fall apart. Because for adults to identify what they want the agreement to be is sometimes the easy part, right? Like you want them to stay seated, you don't want them to use foul language or say talk about gross things at dinner, that sort of thing. But getting the kids to actually buy into that is a whole other process. And that's why a lot of what we do in, our work together with parents is help them find that collaborative space. And 8 and 10, they're absolutely ready for that. If you involve them in the process, you can see worlds of change. For an example, I had clients with an 8 and a 10-year-old, 2 daughters. In the mornings, mom would try to get them going and they would resist. And then they would wait till she got upset and then they would start yelling. And then they would do the thing that they were being asked. And it was quite honestly stressful and awful for everybody. And that's why they ended up working with me, is they just were like, we know we can change this. So they came to some workshops, came to a talk like, something like this. And they started to see like, okay, actually like collaboration, cooperation is not only possible, it's what my 8 and 10-year-old are needing right now. Like what used to work when they were preschoolers and elementary schoolers is not applicable now. Like, young kids, we need to age up our parenting. And I shared a friendly statistic that, in general, parents lag behind their kids' developmental plane in their parenting approach 6 months to 2 years. Because as soon as we feel that we've figured out one developmental stage, they're already in the next one. And so one thing that could be going on here, Gregory, and something to really consider is that you haven't like fully involved them in making this agreement and making it rock solid so that everybody's like, shared their perspective, they're bought in, and they've maybe gone through a really robust process, which I'm happy to share with you if you'd like to jump on a call. I think, Gregory, we met in the last year, because basically that refreshes your parent strategy session, complimentary parent strategy session. I'd love to hop on and help you. I'll drop that link for you. Okay, that's right. Yeah, so you haven't had that session. Okay, yeah, so let's do it soon. Because we can map all that out and you can go try it and see how it fits for your family. And then we can even see if it's a fit for you to hop into our year-long program, the immersion, but there's no pressure. Yeah. This is our way of helping out the folks who actually show up for our workshops. We know you're serious and we want to help. So hope you take me up on that. I have some spots open on Wednesday and Thursday this week, I believe, are still available. Yeah. Great. So Helena's here. Hi, Helena. Nice to see you here. She says, how can parents asking a 13-year-old 7th grader her friends at school? I'm not sure. Let's see. I found out my daughter's not willing to talk about her school friends, but they chat online a lot. I'm very curious. Oh, okay. Got it. Yeah. So you want to know more about what's going on at school with your 13-year-old. So the first thing, this is also looping back to the very first question from Jen about the independence of her 15-year-old. What you all should know, and I actually learned this a little later in my career because I worked mostly with younger kids, but then I raised stepchildren from like 10 and 13 all the way now to 24, 27. And the one thing that I always want every adolescent parent to know is that if your teen or tween doesn't think that you get it, in other words, you haven't gotten enough basic information and connection around their world, like what they're into, who their friends are, those kinds of things, they're not going to just open up to you. Because they think they're like talking to like they're speaking Greek to someone who speaks Latin or something, right? It's like you're not going to have the same reference points, and then they shut down pretty quickly because they're like, oh, you don't get it. And to me, that was always like the most hurtful thing, is to be on the outside of getting it with my child or children or anyone that I care about, like, oh, you don't get it. And it's like, but it's a very common attitude that shuts things down and closes doors. So if there's something, the good news, that's the hard news. And if you can just take a look at that and see if that's something that resonates with you, Helena, I'm curious, let us know in the chat here if it's like, yeah, it seems like she kind of closes me out if she, at certain points. The good news is that you can do something about that. And it's not by asking a direct question about the thing you want to know most about. Okay, everybody, you can't kind of just go straight at it. It's kind of like shining a flashlight in their eyes. It's just too intense and too like skipping some steps. Okay. So what I want you to do is plan an activity, a shared activity with your 13-year-old that you both enjoy, where you can have at least 20 uninterrupted minutes. Helena, I believe you have more than one child, if I remember right. 20 minutes or more doing something that they enjoy, and just do some side-by-side activity. That's right. Side-by-side activity with them, doing it like maybe it's walking around a store and looking at clothes, or maybe it's going on a bike ride, or maybe it's something like that. Get some one-on-one with them, and then just take an interest in anything that comes up. Don't change the subject, stick with it, whatever it might be, or something they mentioned to you within the last 48 hours that they're up to, whether they're reading a book, playing a game, watching a sport, whatever it is, take an interest and stay there. Don't move it to another topic. Don't say, oh, that reminds me of my youth, and tell a really long story. We do this all the time. Instead, just get into their world, get into their world, get into their world. And just try to see if there's any emotional content there. Like it was frustrating, or, oh, I was excited, and empathize with it. Show that you understand. These are the winning cooperation steps from Jane Nelson, by the way, for positive discipline. I love them. I teach them all the time. And we have a talk about it in the YouTube channel, on the Facebook group, about just this. Okay. So you can go back and review it, Helena. It's like the last one we did, or maybe it was 1 or 2 topics ago. Check it out. So you want to just kind of get into their world and show some empathy or understanding before you put yourself into it. They're not going to think that you get it more right away necessarily by telling how you, oh, that reminds me of the time when I blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? If there's even something a little bit askew about your example that doesn't match their experience, they're going to think even more that you don't get it. So just really actually get to know your kids' interests, what's on their mind, ask a lot of interested questions, be curious, like, oh, how did that go? And like, what happened next? And, oh, were any of your friends there? Oh, what did they say? Like, or do they like it too? Oh, why not? Oh, how, like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, it was a bummer that, only half people like the movie. That's funky. Why do you think that is? And just kind of like roll with whatever they want to talk about. Now, this might take, if this is not your MO with this particular child, it might take 3 to 5 times or even 10 before they start to really open up to you. But that's exactly what happened to my client, Deanna, with her daughter, Bella. They went shopping, they did their nails together, they hung out in the house and, had some chill downtime where they're both reading, like, and all the whole time she's just like sitting on these bigger questions that she has. I'm like, just don't do it. Don't do it. Don't shine the light in their eyes. Just like just be with her and be in her world, get to know her again, as if she was, just somebody you're generally curious about. Like maybe you're missing this whole secret life of theirs that you're just like slowly letting into. And then you can start to sense, because she'll start to bring up more important things, like have bigger emotions, or, things that she's never shared with you before, some kind of, not secrets, but just more private stuff. And then you can start to say like, hey, it'd be really cool if there's some way I could get to know your friends. I know you spend a lot of time online with them, and I would just love to have a chance, like, this is where you now can bring yourself into it. Okay. By sharing your true feeling and your perceptions. I see that you chat with them online a lot, but I've never had the chance to meet them in person. It would mean a lot to me. This is vulnerable, friends. Like, this is not, I'm in charge as a parent, I'm on top of it. Like, I'm untouchable authority figure. This is a little vulnerable. I'd really love to have the chance to get to know some of your friends, even just a little bit. That'd mean a lot to me. Do you think that maybe we could host something at our house? Oh my gosh. And if she now feels like you get it and you're not going to be weird or awkward with her friends or whatever worry she might have had, and you can even nip that in the bud and be like, I'll stay out of your way. I'll just like come in and maybe drop off some snacks and say hi. But it would mean a lot to me, even just to meet them and have them kind of like, have some shared space with them. Helena, let us know if any of this lands with you. Maybe some of this is already happening. You can let us know what we could build off of, if something's working in that, if it's like, oh, right, that one time it went well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And this is especially important for her to start. If you feel like there are bad influences or she's not on the right track, this is especially important that you start to like bring home and her social life together somehow. This is especially important, whether you just like share space with some of these folks, but you have to warm up to it. If you went to her today and said, hey, why don't you invite some of your friends over? It's probably not going to happen from what you're telling me, but I really want you to get into her world first. And then if you bring up that ask and she's like, no, I don't feel comfortable or something, number one, just take it at face value. Okay, too soon. We haven't spent enough time kind of like warming our relationship up to that level. Or that's when you can say, look, hon, I just have to be honest, like, I'm not totally comfortable with all your friends. And in order for me to like really get on board with you spending time with them, or, continuing these kinds of friendships, like I do need to at least meet them. And this is just a mom thing. I can't help it, just kind of own it, but then also offer that, like, what can we do to make this happen? And let her decide how, as much as possible. But what is happening is you get to meet these friends, so you can get so you can have a temperature check on the people she's connecting with and spending time with. And then you have a meaningful jumping off point for sharing your concerns, or, being that confidant for her. So at least she can come to you when she's confused. I have another client who's been doing this with her daughter, who's around the same age, just started middle school, so just a couple years younger. And, one of the things that she has really been working on and adamant about is that she has an open door. Like, you can bring anything to me. And that is everything when it comes to having teenagers who you think might be rubbing up against some bad influences, is that when her threshold of comfort is breached, she has somewhere to bring it that is trusted and loves her and unconditionally will support her. And that's you, most likely. I would also help her identify who else she can bring things to. Because if you and her are still working on like kind of getting to that place in your relationship, who does she have? Let's make sure she has at least 1 to 3 adults that she can go to with things, if things start to turn a corner where she's really uncomfortable or even a little bit uncomfortable. Last but not least, we can empower young people. We can empower young people to really do gut checks, notice what feelings things bring up for them, and be able to advocate for themselves. And that's a whole process, but we don't really have time to get into. But Helena, if it's been a year, we can get on the phone. We can get on a strategy session for you too. I think it has been, but please maybe check our last text thread. Okay. And that's the link for you. I'm going to hop back to, yeah, you're welcome. I'm going to hop back to the folks who had shared questions earlier, but Gregory and Helena, feel free, if you have anything that pops up that you want more support with, let me know while you have me here live. Okay. Like a follow-up question. And then same with folks on Facebook. Okay. If there's something that you really would like support with today, please do let me know. I'll have to refresh my thing here. It's not really popping up people's names for some reason. We'll try again. Okay. All right. So next question from Michael. Michael is asking, what is the best way to set limits around electronics? Okay. I just love that this is a question that is being brought up, because what ends up happening is that we try setting limits with electronics like we set limits with everything else. And most of us have been burned. So now we're like, oh crap, like, how am I going to do this actually, where like my kid is going to listen? And that's because electronics are different than most things. They are a connection to the world outside of the home, which is something that might be relevant to what we were just talking about, right? Helena, right? They're also oftentimes the main mode of communication through like official channels too. For example, being able to check your email, or see what your status is on an application, and all kinds of things, right? So they're supercomputers. And also there is an issue with kids getting a certain kind of stimulation from electronics, and then to mode switch to off a device, like what's around them in the world is like so much less stimulating. So they're just really having a hard time like making that transition. And so depending on the age of your child, we really have to handle this differently than other things that we put limits around. Now, that being said, and we have this is another teenage parent. That being said, we have, just like any other limit, we need to go through some steps and some processes to like get to a place where we can really communicate, hold a line, and get our kids buy-in and get them to, as much as possible, either follow the limit or accept the consequences of not following the limit. And so, Michael, since you also have an older child, a teenager, 13-year-old, let's talk about it in that context. So the hardest thing is giving her guidance with this. and setting these limits. It's not too late, but it is a little late in the game. So what that means is that you're going to have to acknowledge how things have been and how you've handled things in the past, well or not well, and why, if there's a change now, why the change exists. Like in the same, it's reciprocal. We've been talking a lot about getting into their world. Like you have to let your teenager into your world. You have to have like at least like 3 to 5 solid reasons why you're going to make a major change, if it is a major change, to any kind of limits, but especially around electronics. We also have to be incredibly compassionate for the fact that there is an expectation, not just a wish or a hope or desire. There's an expectation that teenagers will be available 24/7 to their friends through electronics. This is real. Like this has been around for a while too. My stepdaughter is now 27. When she was in high school, so we're talking, about 10 years ago, she actually, even before that, she had a cell phone. So she was like right early high school, like maybe sophomore year, so 12 years ago. And she was waking up looking horrible in the morning, just like tired and stressed and anxious. And, she's really sensitive to how much food and sleep she gets. And we were able to tell really quickly that something was off. And so we started to talk to her about it, and we just got into her world first, right? So we're like, what's going on? Are you okay? And then she eventually opened up to us to let us know that one of her good friends was going through a relationship crisis, which a teenager is very dramatic. I don't know if any of you've been there, but I have. And it feels like the world's ending. And her friend was reaching out to her in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m., way after midnight, and then was getting mad if my daughter didn't pick up or didn't respond right away. And so my daughter felt really stressed because she wanted to be there for her friend, but she also knew that this wasn't healthy for her. And so we actually ended up, because we went through this conversation of trying to understand like what's best here, we weren't going to punish her for using the phone so late and take it away. But we said, look, how about this? How about we set a curfew for your phone and you put it on the kitchen counter and you just let your friend know that this is, that it sucks. Your parents are being so strict and you can't help it. But you just won't be available after 10 p.m. Now for her, she needed that and she knew she needed it, but if we had just come down hard on her right away, why are you so tired? Why are you staying up so late? And had a reaction like, well, I had to help my friend in the middle of, what? You were on your phone after curfew, and did all these things. Like, I think it would have driven her away from us. But instead we kind of we got interested. We tried to help her understand like, why is she so compelled to get on the phone late at night and all these kinds of things. So having those kinds of conversations with her led to us being able to come up with this limit together collaboratively. Now, it's not always the case that your teenager will identify that they need limits, but I wanted to offer that up as from my own personal experience. And it's akin to the advice I'm sharing today, which may or may not work for your kids, but something worth considering. So the other thing about letting them into your world. So in case you don't need to be let into their world, you need to let them into your world. You have to be pretty solid about the reasons why there are going to be limits on screen time. It can't just be like, well, I read a study that's bad for you. Or that's just what I believe, or you have to have kind of solid ground to stand on. That's another process I'd love to help parents with, is getting clarification about why limits exist so that you can stand with incredible amount of poise and authority behind your limits. And the kids can feel that. And then they will, instead of trying to negotiate and push with you, they'll try to figure out a way to work with it. So there's something to maybe look at there. I'm curious, what it might be for this particular parent, right, who's been sharing this question. What it might be for Michael in terms of your experience with your daughter's electronics limits. It could be too, going back to the family meeting idea for Gregory, that you're just and also with Helena, just out of practice, sort of collaborating and getting on the same page together, which is why the family meetings and things like that, working up to that by winning cooperation, getting to your world, is the main steps that I tend to recommend here. but every situation is different. And so, Michael, if this is something you want support with, let me know. And feel free to claim your complimentary session as well. Like I said, I have some time this week that I opened up for folks, and we'll see if it's a good fit for you to also hop into a program, but no obligation. Okay. All right. The other thing I can say about limits is that limits around electronics, that's really important for all of us to kind of have an eye on, is that, and we're going to talk more about limits, okay, in this next question. But what I want you to consider is, if you're very clear about what the limit is, acknowledge, and you have the conversation with your kids, you let them into your world, you share all the reasons why the limit exists, you have solid ground to stand on. Be ready for three things, okay? First of all, for them to pitch a fit. Like, this is like, you're stepping on some really tender territory here. This is their connection to their friends. This is their connection to their like romantic interest, if they have one. This is how they're going to keep their kind of like social life going, through social media, or like, being connected to communities that they relate to outside of the home, outside of their immediate community. This is a big, big deal. This means a lot to them, and you have to treat it like that. Okay. Like, treat it at the level of, hey, hon, we need to move to a different school, and how they might react to that. Just know that the emotional charge is going to be there no matter what. And that there's going to be a process in that simmering down before they actually respect your limits. The next thing is, be ready to do things like take away privileges if you need to, and let them come to the space of acknowledging that, look, if I'm not able to follow these limits, like, I might have my phone taken away. Like, they need to understand that there's a consequence, and that it's not a privilege to have a phone or unlimited access to internet. And then the third thing is collaborate with them about getting over the fact that it's, like coping, over the fact that it's hard. It's going to be hard for them to separate with their device earlier than they're used to. It's going to be hard for them to, like, maybe help them out like I did with my daughter. It's going to be hard for them to let their friends know that they're not available at certain hours and have those boundaries with the other outside world. It's going to be hard for them to, like, not be able to check on their social media campaign, their social media profiles, to see if people are engaging with their posts. That's going to be hard for them. And I think if you can not belittle that in any way, but actually acknowledge it and help them strategize around it, it's actually helping them with what I call, like, media hygiene, so that they have a good, like, device and media electronics hygiene around really caring for themselves in their relationship to the device, and how it relates to their boundaries and their self-care. Okay. There's a lot of good tidbits there. I hope some of it stands out to you. And if one of those things if it's hard for them and they know it, consider something like, put the phone on the counter at 10 p.m. or the Wi-Fi in the whole house shuts off at 10 p.m. Nobody can use the internet. Everybody gets a tech break from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or something. Consider putting your router on a timer. Even I've had a family put a router on a timer in a lockbox. So, like, no one can get in there in the middle of the night, turn it back on and have their time, and then turn it back off. Whatever level of intervention you think is needed, but do it together as much as possible. And if you can't do it together, let them know that you're sorry, like, this is hard. We wish we didn't have to do this. It seems like the only way right now. We're open to this changing in the future, and this is how it is. Like, we're going to do this for a month, and then we'll revisit it. No negotiation past that, if you need to get there, but I would work my way there. If you start there, get ready for gloves to come off and lots of punches to be thrown. And oh yeah, Helena said, I just physically cut off the internet at home as soon as her daughter steps into the house. Great. Okay. So you heard of this probably, and you're like, okay, that's a way I can do it. You are putting yourself into the position of an adversary, though, Helena, if you didn't come up with this solution together. So what I want you to do is, instead of being here, maybe go, oh, hey, hon, I'm going to disarm a little bit and say, that was kind of a lot. I reacted strongly. I didn't know what else to do. I was kind of desperate for a solution. Can we figure out another way together? And then you're kind of like relaxed, and maybe you can, like, even kind of look side by side at the problem. But I really want you to connect up first. in other ways, Elena, so you have some like relationship credit to spend. Okay. All right, this is a really good one because it's all about boundaries, and boundaries seem to be a big topic today in this week, and like just in general. But I mean, of course they are. It's some of the hardest stuff because we want to play that role where we have authority and we're setting the tone and we're making sure like things happen that need to happen, like get out the door, get to school on time, wipe your butt, put the groceries away when you said you would, do your chores before you leave for the weekend. I'm just thinking the whole range, right? From toddlers to teenagers. But then where it really can get most triggering is when kids start to lose control while they're emotional. Typically angry is the most triggering one and the most challenging, because we all have history with anger, and some of our histories with anger were really traumatic. And so when your young ones are displaying anger in such a way that starts to get physical in any way, it can be one of the hardest things to address, and feel like you're doing it well. So we have Misty, Jasmine, Shaye, Valerie, and Sherry, all at different ages of kids, but a similar topic, which we summarized as, what is the best way to deal with anger when it's in the form of violence, yelling, disrespect, and defiance? Mm-hmm. So everybody take a breath. Let's just start with it. We are hardwired to have a strong reaction to anything that's unfavorable, not going our way, feels threatening. So your child, the existence of anger in your child and their automatic physicality or response is normal. It's part of how we're wired. And so a lot of times we've been given messages across our own childhood or in the society that, as soon as you cross that line, somehow like you're not being natural or something. And it's real. Of course, it's not okay to harm others, but I think making the impulse itself wrong is sometimes taking us down a road that doesn't go anywhere. And also labeling a person for having those impulses as bad or naughty or, any of those things, dangerous is not necessarily helpful either. But what we can do is we can help kids identify when, and through quite a bit of work in social, emotional self-awareness, identify their triggers, catch the sensations in their body that give them the sense that, my gosh, my lid's going to flip. I'm probably going to act out here. Help them with that. Help them with the awareness around what their tells that things are heading in that direction. And you can do this from as young as 2 all the way up to 20, 28. And one of the ways we can do that is we can help them understand what emotions are, how they run our nervous systems, and help them to just like start to see any kind of patterns of what's upsetting to them and how their body reacts to it. There is an actual physical reaction related to outbursts and anger. What it can look like is like if you were to temperature scan a body of somebody who's even just thinking about being angry, but especially someone who is angry. If they just think of a time you were angry, you actually get this physiological response. It's pretty fascinating. But anyway, and you can explain that to the kids because they might not understand why they're doing it. Like they're hitting and then they're crying that they hit all within 10 minutes. I've seen it over and over again. The anger spikes and the sadness comes in and they regret it and they don't understand, they feel out of control. So helping them know that what happens when you're angry is like all this your temperature actually rises up to your head. You can even have like a little bit of like steam off of you. I'm not kidding. The temperature scan. And then your hands and your feet, but especially your arms and your hands get hot. Like I'm going to do something with them. So is it surprising then, cheeks get blazing red. Is it surprising then that kids end up hitting, kicking, biting, using their hands, just doing punching, right? Needing all this activation. And then if you or another person is what they're upset about, then they come at that thing. This is a very natural instinct. Okay. And it's not necessarily a choice in the moment. So helping kids understand that that's just what's happening. That is what's happening. That doesn't make them a bad person or hot temp, like just all these things, like just say this is what happens and it happens to me too. And like, let's try to understand this thing. Because if we place a big value judgment on it, all of a sudden it's like they're either good or bad. There's all this weird guilt and shame that comes in. And we just want to just be a little bit more scientific about it, is what I've seen really work. And then come up with a resilience plan. And this is what I love to do with my clients. This is what we do with every single client I've ever had in my private practice and in our Family Foundations Immersion, our year-long program, is we just like come up with resilience plans for every single family. What triggers you? What are the signs you're upset? What are the coping tools and strategies that work for you? How would you like help when you're upset like that, to help you remember that you don't actually want to hit, you don't want to be a person who hits. You want to be a person who knows how to solve their problems with their words, but you need to go do something right now with that energy. We roll through about 20 different options of things that you can do when you're upset, 20 to 100 options, until we find something that fits every family member. It's really important. And it's something we really stand for, obviously, raising our resilience. We want everybody to have resilience plans. So taking the time to do that is going to make such a huge difference. And it's also not, if you don't have any experience with this, don't expect yourself to be able to do that all on your own. Like I'm giving you tips that you can start with. But if you run into roadblocks, don't let that stop you. Like you wouldn't do that for, I don't know, like let's say your kid has asthma or something and is panting, and you can't invent an inhaler, even though you tried. You wouldn't beat yourself up for that, would you? Well, you're not an inhaler. You're not a pharmaceutical scientist. So like, right. So just because you've had children doesn't mean you have all of the tools in your toolbox to help them with really hard emotions if you were never given them. Right. And well, also, if you have tools that work for you, they may not be the same ones that work for your kids. So let that be okay too, and keep seeking more strategies and support. One thing you could try is an organized, structured program, where you get to meet regularly with a mentor and peers. That's one option. That's why we created the immersion. But just let it be okay that you're seeking support and trying new things and maybe getting some mentorship in this area. Okay. Really important that you don't make that wrong. It's so necessary to just sort of like acknowledge, okay, I got it. I need more tools here. I don't manage my anger well. No wonder my kid is having a hard time too, because like nobody in the family has really got the resilience plan locked down. That's so common, and it's okay. Like it's okay in the sense that there's nothing like unfixable here. We can do something about it. Okay. And I've been there where I've felt guilty, like, oh, it's me, like I should have this figured out. I should be able to just crack the code on my own. And a lot of us will try a lot of things on our own first before we get help, because of our pride and or because we truly want to know, can we do this? But just feel like it's okay. It really is okay. And even like we do it all the time. We're not like, I should know how to power lift or something. What? No, you don't have experience powerlifting, so you go get a coach to teach you, right? The same thing with these kinds of things. So just please give yourself some credit and a bit of a break here. Like, know that there's plenty of resources that you can draw on, and we've put together some of the best, I think, in our program. So here's the next one. How can I be more present and give equal connection time while juggling work, family, pets, and my own mental health journey? Oh gosh, this is so good. So Christy, Jennifer, and Jade Smith. So to be more present with kids, you need to also be able to be more present with yourself. I know it sounds cliche, but it's just true. So oftentimes we get out of practice of acknowledging that we have needs until we get to a place where we just have to like demand them. And it's not very pleasant for everyone else. We're not being very proactive. We're not necessarily modeling very well for our kids. And so one of the pieces that I always work on with clients too is like, what is your self-care plan? Like, how are you taking care of you right now? And I know there's a lot of buzz out there around self-care, but I just think of it simply as regularly checking in with yourself about what you need and making it okay that you might need something different hour to hour or day to day. Like, self-care routines are great once you see a pattern, but don't feel like you need to have it all figured out. The most important thing is your relationship with yourself in this process of checking in with yourself. I have had parents in tears in sessions because I actually asked them what they need. How are you right now? What do you need? When's the last time you checked in with yourself? And they start to cry, and they realize like they're so focused on caregiving and just trying to get through the day to day because it's been stressful, which we work on all those things too. But just that check in with them, it's like it's this tender place. It's like, oh, what like I've been last. I need to take care of me too. So there's that version of it. And then the other version of it is that you are like constantly asserting your needs because you're in a defensive position because there's being too much demand of you, and you get into a place where you almost get too self-centered, but it's not very effective because the environment around you doesn't really know how to jump to the task. So what do we do instead? We check in with ourselves and we learn the ask, the art of the ask, how we ask our environment, which includes people, children, pets, stocking our fridges, whatever that looks like, and setting it up so that when you make the ask, there's more receptivity to it and reciprocity, and it works really smoothly. Now, if this all just sounds kind of like far-fetched, I would just say start with the first step of just regularly checking like with yourself, like, what do I need? And if you have to do it as a role model to your kids to motivate you because you're so focused on what's good for your kids, do it that way. I'm going to check in with myself in front of the children so they can see what that looks like, so that they can see what it looks like to go, am I hungry right now or thirsty? I think I need some water. Yeah, I'm going to drink some water. Hold on. Think out loud how you want your kid to take care of themselves, by the way, all the time. Gosh, I'm kind of cranky. I guess it could be because I'm tired. I mean, I've just been going since I woke up, and I didn't sleep well last night. I think I need to take a little break. I'm going to go sit in the sunshine for 10 minutes and I'll be back. Just go do it. If this is not something you normally do, the kids are going to be like, whoa, something new. And they might come join you. That sounds nice. I want some water, and then they start to say that to themselves. I kid you not. I used to do this in front of the kids, and in my classroom, I'd have 24, 36, 48 kids. And imagine in all of that activity of, by the way, individualized learning plans, because we're Montessori, I would do things like that. I would actually just like step out for 5 minutes and take a few breaths, and I'd alert my coworker. But I would say it in front of the group of children. I really need a brain break. And I didn't do it just because I was defending my energies or something, right? I was setting an example for them. And that really helped me to stick with it. And I always felt better. And then they started to learn from me, right? So that's what I would say is like, consider like role modeling something simple. Don't feel like you have to go 110% in. I know New Year's time can be really intense about that. But what James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, always pitches, like, it's the micro changes. It's all the little decisions across the day. Recently, I was teaching the 1% rule, like 1% improvement or change a day stacks up to 37 times improvement or about in a year. Yeah, 37 times better. So if you can just slide the bar forward just a little bit, build in 1 5-minute break in the morning and one in the evening where you're just really obvious about taking care of yourself. Sign up for one thing that you really want to do, that you want to make a commitment to for the next 3 weeks. It doesn't have to be for 3 years, do those kinds of things. It's really, really important. The other thing is like all these coping tools and strategies that are good for managing anger before it erupts into something more physical, or coming down from that physical sensation or redirecting it, right? We just talked about a lot of those coping tools and strategies you don't do only when you're already upset, you do them proactively. And that is a form of self-care and mental health maintenance, right? So there's like the resilience plan also is not just in reaction to triggers, it's also in prevention, in terms of increasing our bandwidth, taking good care of ourselves, and going forward with being able to support our children in building healthy habits early on. Okay, I've got another one. How is that for you? And by the way, if you hear something that you like or resonate with, please just drop a sentence in the chat for us, in the comments of the YouTube video, wherever you need to, drop that, because it helps us all to just kind of see what you're getting out of it. but it also helps you to get clear about your takeaways, because I do cover a lot of ideas on purpose, because it's a lot. I like to lay out the buffet, friends, and you can choose what fits for you. Like, what do you want to put on your plate? So let me know. We've got Malavika and Helena here. Put something in the chat that you want to put on your plate from this buffet of ideas, please. Something that stood out to you. And if you're taking notes, we always love people to snap a photo and post it in the group. That's really fun too. Or send it to me by email, raisingourresilience@gmail.com. Would love to see it. Share the wealth. Okay, how do we teach matters of the heart, such as making good choices, dealing with friends, building good character, standing up for others, and being resilient? And this is also Michael's second question with Cecilia's question as well. So this is I put this after this last question, and Cecilia, by the way, has 10, 7, and 5-year-old children at home. And it feels like, how do we help them make good choices, build their character? Nice, Malavika, being empathetic. Yeah. Instead of just like the hard line, like, yeah, good. I'm glad that stood out to you. And you got to hear some examples of how you do that, right? Today. Yeah. That's what can be so fun about coming to these sessions and having the coach. So it comes back to what I was just sharing around role modeling, and then role model again. Kids can learn between 10 and 100 times more from what we do than what we say, in terms of what they remember, what they actually learn, what they remember, and what they adopt and absorb into their own repertoire. So I'm not saying that you're not already doing this, Michael and Cecilia, but I wonder where you could turn the dial up a little bit or a lot in terms of role modeling for them. The other thing you can do is you can absolutely use, I would say, like a lot of conflict resolution tools lead in this direction, where you end up really wrapping your head around fairness and how you fix mistakes and how you take good care of other people and relationships, so that you start to build up, more rapport and you have less conflicts. There's just this whole relationship building piece that we teach as well in our 7-pillar system. One of them is positive relationships, but right next to it is conflict resolution and repair, because that's how we maintain positive relationships when they start to go badly. So I think, like, when we're talking about character building, we can actually get pretty direct about it as well as model it. So again, modeling how you would handle a situation, how you would think to yourself before making a decision, is probably the one that stands out the most to me right now to coach you about. So if you're making good choices out loud in front of them, I want you to do something. Don't be a perfect citizen in front of them. That's not what I mean by role model. When I say role model, I mean be human. Grapple with an ethical dilemma in front of them, and do it at a different age level in front of your kids. So with your 5-year-old, it might be like, I really want my brother's cookie. I kind of want to take his cookie, but then he won't have a cookie, so I'm not going to take it. Mom, can you help me save my brother's cookie? Right. So that's maybe an ethical dilemma for your 5-year-old. I'm just making it up, right? But so you can have model that level of dilemma in front of him. Grandma's coming, and she really likes this treat that I have, but I only have a little bit left. I kind of want to hide it from her, if I'm being honest, but I know how much joy it'll bring her if I share. So I'm going to share. And then maybe she and I can go shopping for more, like go to a solution. Little dilemmas, big dilemmas, model what it's like that to make those decisions and to actually grapple with the two, tuning into how it's going to feel to make the better decision. Another thing you can do to foster appreciation in the family is get to know each other better, learn each other's character strengths, love languages, what really excites them, like what motivates them, what their interests are. It's a lot like getting into their world, but you can also use some pretty great frameworks. Like I have all my clients make motivation maps, and also love languages, like mapping their love language as well. And make a poster together and collage or some sort where they all get to know like each other's love languages for a reason, because it's something that's helpful. It's like helpful to know, like maybe for me, like an act of service is everything. And for you, it's a gift. And we can show our kindness to each other even more powerfully if we know each other's love languages. And also just like, it's just another road into like how to be kind to each other. So there's some pieces you can bring into the family system that I think sometimes we just keep in the adult world, but actually kids can geek out on too, like character strengths and love languages. So that's why I bring it to my students and my clients a lot, my parent clients. When you have the opportunity to think out loud in front of your kids, do it. Making decisions, those kinds of things. That's like one of the big takeaways I think is coming out of this particular group's questions. Really different question. I'm going to pop up because it came into the group. Katie Gold wants to help her daughter overcome her high attachment anxiety and transition her out of co-sleeping and into her crib. Katie, I say this for last only because it warrants a whole conversation of its own. I really do think you could benefit from us talking this through. Sleep training is something that works, and it does take some planning and some coordination and some commitment, because oftentimes with sleep training, when it's working, it doesn't look like it's working at first. And that's tricky to navigate, right? And I'm not saying that you'll do it wrong if you follow your kids' cues, but what can often happen is we start to wobble because we're not really sure whether or not this reaction we're getting from our kid is a sign that we're doing it wrong or a sign that it's working. And here's what I have to say about that. Don't give up on a strategy that somebody's recommended to you until you've tried it for at least 3 to 10 times. And don't let your child's reaction to change, if it's a negative reaction, be your answer to whether or not the solution is working. Because here's the thing about life and little ones is that they have limited life experience, and some of the most important lessons are hard lessons, especially if they're strong-willed, stubborn, have a really a strong temperament. They're going to have to learn to cope with not getting what they want, with change. We call it tolerating the no in toddler world, like to tolerate hearing no or like not getting what they want is a very big skill. And if you think of it more as a life skill that they're learning, somehow that helps. So maybe that's the first place to start. Now, when it comes to becoming more secure in an attachment, Katie, it sounds like there's a bigger conversation to be had there. I'd want to know more about the history of, like, how did it go in terms of the time you spent with them, with your daughter? Were there times where you were separated for a long time? There's just all this family history too that can come into play. So I can't just give you kind of general sleep training advice in this format. But let me just tell you, there are like 3 or 4 different methods that are really effective and that I've helped clients with. I've seen them get their child into their own bed, falling asleep on their own, usually within 6 months to a year at the most. So there are at least further along that road where you're feeling like you're on track within 3 to 6 months. So if it's something that's really important to you, you really want to happen soon, we should talk. And I can also direct you to some resources around it if you want to kind of go it on your own. Okay. Let me know. Next one is, okay, so this was an interesting one. And I have 2 more. So we're just going to fit them in these last couple minutes here. How can I feel more at ease about the risks of COVID, from Barbara, which is tough, right? We've all been there. So this is actually, I put these at the end usually because I want now community input too. And I can even put these up as a separate question and tag you in it, Sarah and Barbara. So Sarah's question is, how do I prepare my Montessori preschooler for the behavioral expectations of public Montessori? Another really long, important topic that we won't be able to cover all of today. So it's very specific too. Let's just give it a minute each and see where we get. And in the chat, in the comments, friends, if you made it to this part of the video, you have some information now. Coach back, right? Like, let's hear what you got out of it, how you would apply some of the things we've been talking about to feeling more at ease about the risks of COVID. What could be helpful? What have you found helpful? So a few things is to just reality test your concerns anytime you're concerned. check it against the data, check it against at least 3 friends in your community, see what they're up to. People that are like-minded, have similar levels of threshold of risk tolerance, and see where they're at, and see how you can like kind of pull some plays from their playbook. I hope some folks in this group also will chime in on this topic because it's such an important one. And know that, at the end of the day, like, you have control over some things and you don't have control over other things. And knowing the difference is one of the most important like life hacks I could possibly give and share that I've also benefited from. So really thinking about like, what is within my control? What is something that I'm not going to be able to necessarily have influence over? And kind of wrap your head around that, right? And then last but not least, I would say, collaborate with your kids around, these assessments and these questions. Like let them in on at least the very tippy top concerns that you have, but then save them from the rest. We have a highly anxious generation of children because we've been in a pandemic. We have a lot of mental health concerns for our children right now, with anxiety and depression. Suicide rates are up. A lot of drug use is up. Like, there's a lot of problems in schools right now, especially like school counselors are reporting back this is the worst that they've seen. And so we are needing to be very protective of our children's like fragile sense of safety and security in the world. And so this is one of the ones where, yes, involve them, but only to the extent that they need to be. Okay. And let them know that you're on it. Like, you're on it. You're sure about these decisions you're making. You're sure about the mask wearing that you want, or the hand washing you want, the sanitizing, whatever it is that you want. You're sure about the pod that you're choosing, like just, or the comfort with taking masks off now. Whatever decision you make, try to get out of a wobbly place with it. And there's a few ways you can do that, right? Reality test your ideas and your worries and concerns. Identify what you have control over, what you don't have control over. Last but not least, though, talk it over with somebody who can help you get clarity. And this is something I've done with a lot of folks because it's so important. We need to kind of weed through it all, and then you can get support with, or maybe try out with a untrusted friend, how you're going to talk to your kids about it. And there's some videos out there too. We do need to protect them a bit from our actual level of anxiety around things, and get to a place where they can feel in our nervous system that we got it, like we're on it. So if you get triggered, you're like, oh no, this thing we're going to, it's indoors and there's nobody wearing masks, for example. See if you can sidebar that with your co-parent or with a friend, or with a mentor. Talk it through, and then come to the kids with a plan. And give them one thing they can choose, like, which mask do you want to wear? Or do you want to stay for 1 hour or 1 hour and a half? Like, keep it kind of tight with what they're influencing. Don't put them in charge of their own total safety. It's just like, it's too much when they're really young, especially. So that's my piece for that. For the kindergarten piece, there is quite a difference between Montessori preschool and public kindergarten. This is also something I've helped a lot of parents with. And when I was a kindergarten teacher in Montessori, or when I was a receiving teacher in first grade, this transition is a big developmental landmark. And one thing I can say is that the most distinct differences are things that they will adapt to in the first 3 months, because kids are adaptable. Things like not being able to choose what assignment they're working on, not being able to choose where they sit, not being able to talk during some periods of work time. So they will acclimate. But you might do some practice sessions over the summer with another family, and like have a play date where the 2 kids practice doing something separate at the same time. And you have like 5 minutes of quiet with your siblings, even having to sit in one place for a little while, like kind of getting them used to being in one desk. But then I would say the flip side is also true. Go advocate to that first grade, that kindergarten teacher, that first grade teacher, whatever you're transitioning into. Let them know that they're a Montessori kid. Let them know, and if they're familiar, great. If they're not, be like, here are some things that my kids used to, and educate them a bit. I've actually co-written letters with some of my clients going through that exact transition to the next teacher, to be able to kind of explain what Montessori is and why the kid might have certain behaviors and certain expectations, and why it might take some time for them to get used to things. And then whether the teacher likes it or not, and I'm saying this as having been a former teacher, send your kid to school with something that's interesting for them to do when they're bored. Like they have to have a next activity. Like sitting there at a desk, it's just not going to go well. I was a Montessori transition kid, by the way, and the main complaint that we got from my teacher in my first grade conferences was that I got up out of my seat and I wandered around and I talked too much. But then my mom didn't know to do this ahead of time, but to explain to her the environment I'd been in, Montessori environment, where I can exactly do that. And then my teacher was actually a lot nicer to me. So get ahead of it if you can. And Sarah, I know we've had conversations about how to support you in general. So I know that we can follow up with each other soon. All right. Lots of love to everybody. Do take advantage of those complimentary sessions that are available right now. And it's a really good time to do it, especially because if just in case it's the right time for you to really go for it in learning how to raise resilient kids and filling your toolboxes. We have a cohort starting and we're kicking it off this Saturday. So I'd really encourage you that if you have any inkling that that might be exactly what you want to do next, or that might be the most empowering path for you to have a community and a mentor and a structure and like just kind of rest into the fact that you have this resource and the support regularly in your life for the rest of the year, hop on a call with me and let's get you some support. And then let's see if it's a good fit for you to join this incredible program that we've put together. We're making permanent change. I mean, folks are saying they don't even recognize the parent they used to be. And their kids are getting along with them so much better. I had a dad recently say, it's not the first time either. He goes, I'm not yelling anymore. I stopped. Excuse me. It wasn't surprising, but it was just like one of those moments where you're like, this is possible, friends, I asked him how, and he goes, well, joining the program. I was like, no, but how, He goes, well, my toolbox is full enough now that in the moment, I can stop and say, is this going to be the most effective thing yelling right now? No, I'm going to use one of these other tools that has a much better shot at actually getting through to the kids or solving the problem or addressing the issue than yelling ever would be. So he just he swaps out that yelling for something that could possibly lead to the solution. And he's starting to have success with those solutions, which is really reinforcing it. So like, why would he yell? It's amazing, right? And whatever your yelling is, and whatever that thing is that you really want to change, if this is your year to do it, the way to find out if it's a fit is hop on that call with me, and we'll still get you some support around strategies, but also we'll have a chance to see if this is the right time. Okay. All right, folks, we're going to wrap up now. This long Ask Me Anything. So a lot of people joined the group and lots of questions. So thanks for hanging, and we'll see you next time. And for some more support with our Monday Mindset Moments next Monday at noon. All right, lots of love. Bye for now. Bye, Helena. Bye, Malavika. Bye, folks.